Hey, y'all, we are finding ourselves in Jerusalem. Paul has made this journey back into, we'll call it the mothership. He's made its way back to kind of where it all started. And while he was there, some of those people from Ephesus who didn't like him in the first place started a ruckus, and there was a lot of chaos, and they were getting ready to they arrested him, and they're getting ready to get rid of him, essentially. And so we find him brought into the barracks, and he finally gets a word in. He catches the ear of the people near him so that they are able to listen rather than just to hear the screams of the people around him. And it says that a hush went over the crowd. And he starts to address them in the Hebrew language. Before we even get started, why is that important that he would have addressed them in the Hebrew language?
I mean, is that just to prove his Jewishness?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's validating who he is. He's saying, I'm one of you in this. And realistically, it says the Hebrew language, which other translations will say a dialect of Hebrew. So it's probably Aramaic that he's speaking. And so this is something that is extremely familiar to the religious elite, the Pharisees and the Jewish people in Jerusalem. And so now.
So I was gonna ask, so the triune, I'm just kind of going back to chapter 21, verse 27. Why did he ask do you know Greek again? Like, because he's talking to the triune, right? Like, do you know Greek? Are you not the Egyptian then who stirred up the revolt and led the 4,000 men?
Verse 27.
In
Chapter 21, right?
chapter 21, verse 37.
37. Sorry.
In that like context leading into where we're at now. So why, like, sort of like, I guess, why did he prompt with, do you know Greek? Probably that's, I mean, just like, do you understand what I'm saying? Or is it?
It came from the accusations that were coming against him.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the next verse, are you not the Egyptian then who recently stirred up a revolt and led the 4,000 men of the assassins? So when he's asking them, when he's speaking Greek, when he's speaking Hebrew, he's giving himself credibility and proving that all of these things that they're saying are not true.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is just kind of him like, okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, he's validating
He's
himself.
validating himself, like I know who, like what I'm talking about. Because again, I mean, he can speak both.
Right.
You know? And so it's like, I'm like, I didn't know, obviously him saying that there's a reason behind it. And I just forgot what that was. Because I'm like, well, he was mentioning Greek and now he's switching to Hebrew. I didn't
Right.
know what the significance of that switch was. But,
Yeah, he's
also shows he's no hiker. He's a real dude.
he's intelligent. And it's
that's true.
it's interesting because many people in this mob would have known him as Saul.
Sure.
They would have seen him
Yeah,
as
he's coming
this
back home, that's right.
young up and comer in the order of the Pharisees. And so maybe some of them are simply just hurt of, how could you do this? You gave up on us. You gave up on everything that we believe. And so,
You have to remember too that Paul's a very dynamic speaker.
yeah,
He's not they expect somebody who's gonna beg for his life. He doesn't
Right.
have to.
he doesn't have to. Yeah, that's true.
Gotcha.
And so he catches their attention with Hebrew, and that's when the hush goes over the crowd. Hush.
This is another one of those things where he playing both sides
Right.
where he needs to play it.
Yeah, he's good at the politics of this.
Yeah.
And we'll see that come into play even at the end of this chapter as well, that he's extremely political in the way that he operates.
Yeah, so Zach, I think we have the same Bible. So like there's a little footnote of verse 2. and says, just as Paul got the tribune's attention with his Greek, referencing verse 37, he quieted the Jewish crowd by speaking Aramaic. And so it's like, I think that obviously he's like getting both like the legal side's like attention and people
Yeah,
saying, look, like I can talk to you both.
right.
Here's who I am.
Yeah,
You just put them both in the place.
Yeah. It's like,
right.
yeah.
And this is what he has to do to gain the attention of the people, because there is so much outrage that people are belligerent at this point. So he's just trying to calm them down enough to where he can speak. And what we're going to see now that he has their attention is that he's going to share his testimony in a really powerful way. And we're going to see a theme here is he breaks his testimony up into 3 different sections. And when we think about our own testimony, these are the 3 sections that we can organize it into. And that is life before Christ, the encounter that he had with Christ, and then his ministry in Christ after. Those are the 3 branches of his life that he's about to talk about. So would somebody read for us verses 1 through 5? Thanks.
Men, brethren, and fathers, hear my defense before you now. And when they heard that he spoke to them in the Hebrew language, they kept all the more silent. And he said, I am indeed a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, taught according to the strictness of our father's law, and was zealous toward God, as you all are today. I persecuted this way to the death, binding and delivering into prisons with men and women. As also the high priest bears main witness, and all the council of the elders, from whom I also received letters to the brethren, and went to Damascus to bring in chains even those who were there to Jerusalem to be punished.
Perfect. Thank you. So this is the before Christ section. And Pat, to your point, Paul was a very eloquent speaker. They call him a babbler because he doesn't quit speaking, but there's purpose in what he does.
Right.
And so many of these people who are here and listening to him speak have been there in the past. And if we remember, if we were to turn back to chapter 7, when Stephen is trying to make his case before being stoned, he starts it with brothers and fathers. So Paul's using the same language and it's catching their attention. And he says, hear this defense that I make before you now. So they are seeing a similarity between what happened in the first Christian martyr and Paul now. And so he's addressing them in the Hebrew language, which is continuing to pique their attention. They're continuing to pay better and closer attention. And so he says, I am a Jew. That is the number one thing that he needs to say in this moment. I am a Jewish man. And so I was born in Tarsus. I was brought up in this city. So this is home for me. I was educated at the feet of Gamaliel, which, if we remember, was a part of the Sanhedrin in the past and was a well-respected, well-known, and loved person. And Gamaliel, historically, I'm going to blank on his grandfather's name, but Gamaliel's grandfather was in the first order of Pharisees. So he was kind of the peak of this whole thing. So to be trained and to learn under Gamaliel said, I have a whole lot of authority here, that I know what I'm talking about. And he was taught the strict manner of the law, and he was zealous for it. Because remember, they remember him as this young up and comer, that he was our future, right? The Pharisees, this was the guy who was going to take over someday. And he was persecuting those of the way, and he was delivering people to prison. All of these things were happening before he met Christ. When he's talking about his life before Christ, what is the main thing that he's saying here? What's the heart of his message?
He's trying to make
himself to be just like them.
Yeah, exactly.
He's trying to create that connection.
I was one of you.
He was saying, listen to me.
Yeah,
Enough evidence.
yeah. But not only that, those are all correct, but not only that, but also the fact that his life was defined by something that was not Christ,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
He was ingrained in his own sin in these early days. And there was nothing wrong with getting an education. There was nothing wrong with growing up in the Jewish faith, but he took it too far. He took it to the point of persecuting and killing people. And so what he's saying was, I was a sinner. There's,
I mean, even so, like my version in verse 3, he says, I'm a Jew born in Tarsus, Cilicia with part of the city, educated in the field of blah, 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 being zealous for God as all of you are this day. So
Yeah.
like, for one, I think he's leaning into the fact that like we're not too far off on our understanding of faith.
right,
We believe in the same God, and it's like, and again, more like I was following the letter of the law with you all, like we were following the same God. And so I think that's helpful as he is again going to try to delay,
yeah,
right? But also really being saying like this is the same God. You just didn't choose like his son. You know?
Yeah.
And so
yeah. He has a very beautiful way of pointing out the sin in the issue, but not putting them down in it.
yeah.
That
Which I think, I mean, we as like the modern church have not always done really well.
Yeah.
Like Chewy's like, look, guys, I was one of you. I was the greatest among you.
mm,
I was the person that was delivering both men and women to prison and struggle. You know,
yeah,
really saying like, I was really not always who I wanted to be, but yet even I was able to.
yeah.
And obviously not that part yet, but
So that's coming.
yeah, it is very quickly.
When I read this, I wrote a note. Sometimes we're looking for a physical, material answer to a spiritual question. Physically thinking that we're going to solve a spiritual question.
Yeah,
And that's what we get off of things. He was kind of like that. He thought by doing what he's doing, he's going to answer his calling, so to speak.
yeah,
I think he knows he's talking for an hour, so.
He thinks,
say more about that.
Huh?
Elaborate, please.
I think he knows he's talking for God.
Yeah,
He's not afraid of what he's gonna say because he has a spirit,
yeah,
so he's very sure of himself.
absolutely.
see, that's what I'm saying. He chose to, even though he knew that, he chose to do physical things. Have for him.
Yeah,
That's one of the reasons these people are so angry. They know what happened.
right.
They know what he stood for. They can't see the other side of the evil.
Yeah,
I mean, but he's also facing death. Like, this is, they're arresting him and, that he's like the leader of the way, really. I mean, obviously, Peter's still involved in Jerusalem, but like, we finally got him. We got our guy, and yet he's still standing firm, like you were saying, right? Like he's still standing firm and still so sure of his faith.
yeah,
He's not backing down from it. It's like, it's gonna say the same thing I've always said. This is who God is, this is what he's done. And even though I'm facing death, just like Jesus, he took it and never wavered
yeah,
from that.
yeah. Like we said, this story kind of mirrors Jesus a little bit. And if we remember Jesus being arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, they said, "Are you this person?" All he says, "I am." And there's power behind that because, of course, that's how God introduced himself as the great I am. And so, yeah, Paul understands that he's got the Spirit with him and that he's speaking with authority, so he doesn't have to be afraid of what's to
But he
come.
hasn't come to the point of telling them really.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, this is,
Till he does that, and they're just kind of like, oh, whatever, you know.
yeah, for sure. And of course, we're stopping and he just kept going. Yeah, this is one big monologue that he has, not to stop and talk about the different sections of it. So it would have come a little quicker to them in that way.
Yeah.
But
Right.
You gotta remember too, that he can only talk to him, God is the one who draws him to him.
Yeah.
absolutely.
He can only go so far with his words.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
And that's an important lesson for us to learn when thinking about our own testimony, that it is not our role to change somebody's heart. That no matter what we do, I could preach the best sermons ever behind Jesus, but it's not me who changes people.
Yeah.
It's God who does. And Paul knows that.
Yeah, like, that's why he's just like, this is who I
Because
was.
it happened to him.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and he's showing that there is not a defense against what he's saying because this is something that actually happened to him.
And everybody knows it.
Right.
I mean, because of his reputation. Because he was, a student of one of the most highly regarded, rabbis at the time.
Mhm.
He was, and again, he just spoke Greek, now he's speaking Hebrew.
Yeah,
He knows his stuff. He's smart. And he, again, him killing everyone and, and like, prison like that, earning a lot of respect from the high priests.
Mhm.
And it's just like, he was the big dog and he stepped down from that. So they know he's like, look, this is what I did. This is who I was. And obviously, but how I've changed.
yeah. So
So you talk about God, you get to the point where you love people trying to kill you, you're doing something right.
that's right.
Jesus ruffled feathers, Paul's ruffling feathers too.
That's right. So that was life before Christ. Now we're going to get into his encounter with Christ. Would somebody read for us verses 6 through 11? Thanks, Brett.
As I was on the road nearing Damascus, about noon, a very bright light from heaven suddenly shone around me. And I fell to the ground, and I heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Who are you, sir? I asked. And he replied, I am Jesus of Nazareth, the one who you are persecuting. The people with me saw the light, but didn't hear the voice. And I said, what shall I do, Lord? And the Lord told me, get up and go into Damascus, and there you will be told all that you are to do. I was blinded by the intense light and had to be led into Damascus by my companions.
Thank you. So he had a mission of going into Damascus. So he was going to go and continue to squash the way. But on the way,
On the way, found a way.
that's right. I love it.
A lot of ways.
But there's a great light that suddenly shone around him. I do think it's interesting here that when we read Paul's story previously, and the way that we retell it is his eyes were covered with scales, right? For him, what he said is, I was seeing the glory of God in such a way that I could not see anything else. The light shone so brightly that there was nothing else I could see.
Good contrast, but it's high noon, so we meant a bright sun.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we see something in the character of Jesus here too. So Jesus tells him, rise, go to Damascus, do all these things, right? But he doesn't help him see to get there. He has to make that trek with trust. Kind of reminds us of John the Baptist's father, Zechariah, that he was told, hey, you're going to have a son. And he laughed. And then he was mute until the son was born. That, okay, you're going to have to learn here. You're going to have to trust me through this process, through this 9-month process. So Paul, the light is shining so brightly, the glory of God is shining so greatly down on him that he has to be led by hand by these people that he's with to go into Damascus. It almost makes you wonder, he says that they could hear the voice, but they didn't understand it, which reminds us of Pentecost a little bit, that
Oh, yeah, they saw the light.
they saw the light.
Back in Acts 9, it says they heard the voice,
Okay.
that's what I was looking for,
He
because I
said they
thought,
could not hear the voice on this.
right, but in Acts 9, it says
Well-
they did hear the voice.
Well, so mine says that here in verse 9 says, now those who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. So
Maybe
they
some,
heard a voice, but maybe not verbatim what Paul heard
yeah,
or
Yeah.
saw. Yeah.
It could be both ways, depending on how you interpret that.
I'm sure he told them very quickly after, here's what.
well, that's my question is, did he, or did he say, okay, we're still going to go to Damascus, I just need your help to get there?
I mean, surely he's like, oh my gosh, I just got blinded.
Just his companions on the
Oh,
road.
okay.
Fellow.
These
Bad
would have
guys.
been, the people who've been with him would have been part of his crew.
They're
to
bad
go
guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is posse at this moment.
Go get Christians.
Maybe he didn't
driving
want to
back
reveal that, hey, you know, the guy that we're trying to snuff out, just talked to me,
Yeah,
and now I can't see anything,
yeah, now I'm blind.
right? Like,
Yeah, so maybe he didn't tell him,
yeah.
but they just continued to go into Damascus. One of those
I
questions that
think
I don't
that's
know we'll
an
ever know.
Second attention getter.
Yeah,
Okay. You don't believe the.
right,
Yeah.
got you, it's
Yeah.
right here.
That's you.
What, do you think he was blinded because he wasn't able to see the glory of God because he didn't believe? Like, do you think there's any, I mean, significance to, because I mean, so heaven is like, the light of heaven is the brightness of like God's glory, but because he didn't believe in Jesus as Lord and Savior, would that have anything to do with him not being able to see? Or maybe that's why they didn't, like, the other people didn't hear the voice, or didn't recognize the voice. I don't know if there's any.
I think Jesus coming to him was a very pointed thing.
Yeah,
And this was the person that Jesus was coming to.
for sure.
So I think in that regard, that's probably why the other people didn't
Yeah,
hear it. As far as the not being able to see, at this moment, he's a God-fearing man, right?
Yeah.
At least in his own mind, he follows the law to the T,
yeah,
but he saw the glory of God revealed in such a way that he had never seen it before
because it was made,
because it was
everything
Jesus.
was made perfect through Jesus' death.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so we have a blind man named Paul, and he's going to continue into Damascus. Now, would somebody read for us verses 12 through 16? Thanks, Krista.
A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. He stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very moment, I was able to see him. Then he said, the God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will and to see the righteous one and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all people of what you have seen and heard. And now what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name.
Thank you. I appreciate his description of Ananias here because we know Ananias to be a Christian, but previous to that, he was a devout man who followed the law closely. And so this gives everybody that's listening to him speak a certain respect for Ananias. And so-
He's also with you.
Right. So he's giving credit to somebody who's, yeah. And I do appreciate too, I don't know if Ananias told Paul or at this point Saul about no, God, I've heard about this guy and I'm not going to baptize him.
Yeah.
I don't know that Ananias told him about that conversation. But so he goes to Ananias, and at that very hour he received his sight and he saw him. And Ananias has these words that the God of our fathers appointed you to know his will, to see the righteous one and to hear the voice from his mouth. So Ananias told Paul, you are blessed and highly favored. There is something different about you. You have been chosen, anointed, ordained to do something. And that is to know the righteous one, to see him and to hear the voice of his mouth. And then he says, for you will be a witness for him to everyone what you've seen and heard. So as we know, the linchpin of the book of Acts, Acts chapter 1, is you'll be my witnesses once the power of this Holy Spirit comes upon you from Jerusalem to Judea and Samaria to the ends of the earth. I don't know that Paul would have understood that he really was going to be one of the people that takes it to the ends of the earth best, but he hears this calling on his life, this commission to go and tell everybody what you've seen and heard. So he goes, he tells them about the righteous one, and he says, Jesus was crucified and Jesus resurrected. Same message over and over and over again, because it works every time.
He recognized his calling, but he never recognized the magnitude.
Yeah,
He recognized his calling, but he never recognized what the magnitude of it.
yeah, that this
I think
was
you're right, yeah. He just never knew how much
A big deal.
influence he was having.
right.
Which,
Yeah.
I mean, we can all relate to that.
Mhm.
I mean, like, sometimes we don't know the impact of what we're doing, the conversations we have, how that's gonna ripple.
I see what you're saying, but I actually think Paul knew. Because he went back to these churches 2 or 3 times. In this area that was far removed from Jerusalem. So I think he knew that his impact was being felt.
Throughout
I think
this
he
time,
was
though?
impacted.
Yeah, I think he did to some degree. I mean, he may not have, obviously, he couldn't project 2,000 years of the future and still be reading these letters, but I think he did have an idea that he had been given a commission to go and preach, and he did it. And everywhere he went, there were large groups of people that came to see him. So I think he had an idea that
Yeah.
he was reaching people.
Yeah, I think he knew he had a mandate.
Yeah,
You know, he knew that he knew he'd been spoken to God, but he didn't realize how this was gonna impact the world.
well, right.
You know, that's.
Yeah, well, yeah, and to that degree, of course.
Right, yeah,
But I think he knew that, when he showed up in town, a crowd came around.
oh,
Yeah,
So I think he understood that he was having a positive,
But he's front
Yeah.
line now.
Yeah. yeah.
I mean, do we know the timeline of which he wrote back to the churches? Like, was it he already written some of the letters?
at this point, he's already written some of them,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
and a lot of
I
them
didn't
he'll
know
write after he's arrested here.
Gotcha.
Really?
Because I didn't know if, so I feel like Paul's impact, maybe he didn't know how much his impact would be, or maybe I'm gonna write these letters, I don't know if they're gonna even pay attention to the letters, but.
Well,
I
yeah,
know
but he
sent
was
it to-
writing it to the person he had put in charge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
He sent it to Timothy, he sent it to the church of the Ephesians, but that was again to Timothy. So
yeah,
he was writing these letters back to the people he had left there in charge of those churches. So
seriousness of the nature of what he is right. These people,
Yeah,
it's more dire than what he had been.
in a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways. And it wasn't gonna be just a shoe in his acceptance or whatever.
Well, yeah,
Right.
but now he's back with the heads of the Jewish church.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these were the big dogs.
This is a sad part. In the first century was when books came about,
Mhm.
and they have found things that people scribbled on things from Paul's sermons. There weren't any books, and they were just starting to happen.
Yeah. And so for him to know the impact is hard to say.
So no, this was going around, word of mouth.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, I think in this situation, we're kind of both right. He understood what he was doing and he knew what God was capable of without having the knowledge of really how far it's extending.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the commission was to take the ends of the earth. And Paul kind of started the fire within Timothy and would like plant some like stuff there. And then it was rooted from Paul's ministry, but then it grew through everybody else who was already there.
Yeah.
And through the people that he had led and appointed to lead the Ephesians, like the Philippians. And so then it's like, letting them take it where it was going to go to the ends of the earth. I don't know if he understood like how far that was.
Yeah.
But I think he understood like the magnitude of his calling because he is standing so firm in his faith and right now in front of people who want to take his head off.
Right.
It's like, this is I'm getting, this is the same message. Here's my story. But yeah, I mean, I think the magnitude of it, even right now, it's like hard for us to like.
Well,
imagine.
in our case, John Wesley.
Yeah,
I mean, here we are, what, 150, 200 years later,
yeah.
still preaching the same thing John Wesley.
Still rocking it.
Still right. We got the
I
big
mean,
Methodist symbol
yeah.
right up front.
That's right.
I mean, and he did not know that there would be people studying his sermons in seminary. Like,
Yeah.
It's a class that you take,
Yeah.
And so it's just like that, I think, again, we can look back and say that our story, like, I mean, sometimes we don't know the ripple effect of like what we say or do or how we treat somebody. I mean, it's a little cliche, like you like held the door open for some person and that they're having a bad day and they help somebody, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's a bit overdone, but I think that there is some understanding, like we can only do what we can do in the moment. And what God does with it is up to God.
Absolutely.
Going back to the fact that Paul knows that I'm not making any changes in people's lives. And I'm not doing anything. I'm just telling them God's doing the rest.
Yeah.
And saying, yeah, we just do what we can do. And
Remember, nature, he's a zealot,
Hmm.
and he just had the wrong message until now.
Yeah, previously.
Wouldn't have to do things halfway.
Doesn't know how.
that
No,
is
that-
true.
That's what I mean. Go for it, whatever.
Gets in
Yeah.
trouble.
He's thorough.
Yeah.
But I love Ananias's response here. He goes, "You're gonna go and tell everybody what you've seen, what you heard. What are you waiting for? Be baptized and go do it."
I delivered my message. I don't want to be around you any longer.
Yeah.
You're a scary dude. I'm out.
Isn't there a narrative on Ananias that he wasn't too sure about what he was doing?
He definitely
He was
was.
not,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I really want to do this.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, this guy has killed a lot of our friends, like this is a dude I want to go and talk to.
yeah,
And show, hey, I've been told by God and Jesus that this much is good.
right.
At least he didn't go jump off the boat just into a wave.
That is very true. He did not run away that far.
He sang a hymn after inside the belly of the whale. We'll talk about it on Sunday.
Find out this Sunday.
But we've seen in Paul's 3-point testimony, we've seen before Christ, we've seen encounter with Christ, and now we're going to talk about his ministry in Christ. So if somebody would read for us verses 17 through 21.
I will.
Thanks, Billy.
So when I had returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I fell into a trance and saw him saying to me, make haste and get out of Jerusalem quickly, because they will not accept your testimony about me. And I said, Lord, they themselves know that in one synagogue after another, I imprisoned and beat those who believed in you. And when the blood of Stephen, your witness, was being shed, I myself was standing by and approving and watching over the garments of those who killed him. And he said to me, go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles.
Awesome. Thank you. So he has got people wrapped in attention. And like we said, he's a brilliant speaker. And so he starts with the same words that Stephen starts with. Brothers and fathers, whatever he said next. And now he's going to bookend it with, when I was standing there when Stephen was dying, people saw me. People saw me watching over the clothes.
You saw me. Yeah.
But the Lord told me to go and to
It's the Gentiles.
far away to the Gentiles. And that was the ministry that Paul had. And so,
And it's really crazy. Like he literally used Stephen's words
Mhm.
and then said, guys, I was watching the garments of people who were shed.
yeah,
I was there. I saw it, you know.
yeah,
Again, I think although it is like sort of post knowing Jesus, it's also tying in to the fact that, you know, like he was, I mean, again, he's still reiterating, like, I was one of you.
yeah.
Still.
And there was redemption for him
And there was
still.
redemption.
And so this poses as a challenge for us of, what's your 3-point testimony? Who were you before Christ? How did you encounter Christ? And what has that led to since? Not gonna make everybody share their testimony, but it's a good thing to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Of where were you, what happened, and how did you get where you are? And so that ends Paul's speech here. I'll read for us verses 22 through the end of the chapter. It says, up to this word they listened to him. Then they raised their voices and said, away with such a fellow from the earth, for he should not be allowed to live. Pretty harsh. And as they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, so this is not a custom. We don't see people get mad and start throwing dust in the air, but they are so wrapped in their own emotion that this is the only thing they can think to do. Start throwing whatever we can get our hands on. And the tribune ordered him to be brought into the barracks, saying that he should be examined by flogging to find out why they were shouting against him like this. So the guards are saying, there's obviously something that you've done wrong, that these people are so upset. Why don't we just flog you until you tell us what it really is? Let's not worry about the long and the short of it. But when they had stretched him out for the whips, so they have elongated his body, ready to start whipping him, Paul said to the centurion who was standing by, is it lawful for you to flog a man who is a Roman citizen and uncondemned? Like we said, Paul is extremely political.
And legal.
He has waited until the last possible moment to do
And
this.
pull that.
And we've
That was
seen,
illegal for them to
Sure,
flog
right.
somebody without actually
Without a trial.
having like a trial.
They have to have a trial.
but we remember in Philippi, he let them whip him first before he said this. Why did he have a different tactic this time?
Probably more serious.
This one was more serious for sure.
They're like, oh gosh, this actually could get bad, could get ugly. But also, again, to prove like, again, I am one of you.
Right.
And just like, I am a Roman citizen. Because that left does not mean that I'm not still a Roman man.
Yeah,
And you can't do this to me. Just, just to kind of put it back in that hard
They
place.
put them on their own law, they couldn't do it.
yeah.
Which Jesus did quite a bit too.
Mhm.
He always kind of ordered it back to him.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
slowing things down, he's causing mass confusion in their mind. He's a Greek, he's a Jew, he's smart, now he's a Roman.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think they knew which way to turn.
Right. Yeah, he had all of his bases covered. And I think in Philippi, he was able to withstand the whipping, the flogging, knowing that it could be used for the good. I think when he sees this, he realizes there's no good that's going to come out of this. So let's go
He's
ahead
gonna
and
be embarrassed. He's not,
Yeah.
it's not something seen by people.
right.
He's like, okay, this isn't gonna be productive. I'm just gonna try to save my neck here.
Yeah. And you can read it as pretty nonchalant. That, hey, is it lawful for you to flog a man who's a Roman citizen? Probably a little more intense than that.
That's true.
That, and when the centurion heard this, is verse 26. When the centurion heard this, he went to the tribune and said to him, "What are you about to do? For this man is a Roman citizen." So the tribune came and said to him, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" He said, "Yes." Tribune answered, "I bought this citizenship for a large sum." Paul said, "But I am a citizen by birth." So those who were about to examine him withdrew from him immediately, and the tribune was also afraid, for he realized that Paul was a Roman citizen and that he had bound him. So the tribune, these people who were getting ready to flog him, had paid for their citizenship in Rome.
Because they're Greek.
But
Right.
he was more Roman than they were.
Right. He has the trump card here, right?
Yeah.
He's got an ace in his pocket. And
Is there Egyptian or Greek?
they're Greek, they're Hellenists.
Okay.
And so my study note says that people could obtain Roman citizenship other than by birth. And they usually took the name of their sponsor. So the tribune's name was Claudius, who was an emperor at the time. And so that's who he bought his citizenship from. It was, I paid for my citizenship. And Paul said, I didn't have to pay for anything.
Yeah.
I was born into this.
This is my birthright.
Yeah,
Citizenship could have been revoked
right.
along with his life.
Yeah, especially when he's doing this to a Roman citizen.
Like playing your native Texan trump card. Everybody just falls away.
You play that card.
You're from California.
That's right.
You're a California Texan.
We don't eat that in and out burger crap here.
Give us
We
the
got
Whataburger.
Whataburger.
That's essentially what Paul is saying. Like, I was
Explain that to me.
We got Whataburger.
I was born in this Whataburger. I did not have to pay for it, is what he's saying.
You were born in In-N-Out. This came here. Wow, that's it.
That's a great way to think about Paul's citizenship in Rome. Thank you. I appreciate that. So Paul's a long, tall Texan at this moment.
Exactly.
He's like big set.
But they just all flee because they know he's got it and they don't.
Verse 30. But on the next day, desiring to know the real reason why he was being accused by the Jews, he unbound him and commanded the chief priests and all the council to meet. And he brought Paul down and set him before them. And so Paul's going to have an opportunity to preach his case again, to defend himself
It's like,
a second time, which is really a theme in Paul's life. He's given this opportunity time and time again to be like, why are you doing all this? And he says, because Christ was crucified and Christ resurrected.
never changes.
And that's chapter 22. Do we have any thoughts, questions?
I think we see how amazing Paul's actions and ministry come together in such a forthright way.
Mm.
It doesn't happen. When it happens.
Yeah,
I think that's what we see.
absolutely.
This is only kind of the beginning of what we see.
Right. Yeah, he just gave the Spark Notes version of his life.
So I've kind of heard this put us a couple of different ways, but you know, that Jesus doesn't always call someone who's equipped, but he equips someone that he calls.
Right.
But in Paul's case, he called someone that was equipped.
Who's, yeah,
He was already equipped,
Yeah.
and he just gave him a different set of equipment.
he put him on a new playing field.
Yeah.
He already had all the tools.
He already had,
Equipment, yeah. He was given
because he had
a
the
better goal.
Jewish background, he had the speaking ability, he had the knowledge, he had the language skills. He had everything he needed, that God needed him to have,
Yes.
Yeah,
you know? He just had to get him playing for the right team.
yeah, just needed to be directed in the right way.
Well, he wanted to spread the word further than where it was going. This was his tool.
Mhm.
Paul was that person. Spread it beyond. And the closed society.
Yeah,
Well, you're right. He understood how God or how Jesus wanted him to handle the law
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because he was well aware and well versed in the law.
Yeah.
So he knew what needed to be changed.
think about how Jesus used the Old Testament.
Mhm.
yeah. Jesus,
Absolutely.
See? And this is kind of the same thing.
635,
Knew them all.
knocked them all down.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Good stuff.
I was going through and looking. Say we take 1, maybe 2 weeks off between now and the end of the book of Acts, we'll be done early December. We're knocking it out.
Because it's 28.
28 chapters.
That's good.
Does Paul die while, like, I mean, obviously he does eventually, but like in the Acts?
Yeah.
He does, okay. I didn't know, because I was.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. I mean, eventually,
Dude, don't
just
jump.
like- But it just feels like every situation he's getting himself into is getting more and more
Tense.
tense and fatal.
Yeah, you can feel the buildup happening.
You do, and so I'm like, and so I didn't know if like that's obviously documented in Acts or if it's documented later on in a letter or something.
We see it in Acts.
And again, I'm just like,
Yeah,
it really feels like he's just getting himself into lots of trouble
Yeah,
as the word is spreading, his like the price on his head is.
Well, again, in a way, it reflects Christ.
You know, you tell him, don't go here because you're gonna be killed, and he says, don't go here because you're almost gonna be killed.
yeah.
Yeah,
He's like, so where do you want me to go?
exactly. Where am I supposed to go? I'm gonna
Yeah.
die eventually.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, would somebody be willing to close us in a word of prayer?
I will.
Thanks, Brady.
Oh God, we just, again, just come to you, very thankful for your word. Thank you for Paul's life. Thank you for just the ministry that he led and just how he kind of pioneered, how we should share our testimony, God. I mean, just as we've gotten to just know that how he shared it, we can look into our own faith and just see how the best way for us to just share who you are, just to show where we were, how you changed your life, and what life looks like with you. There's a huge difference there, and just thank you for that thing. We just thank you that you make our path straight, and that life does look a lot better with you. So just take us from this place, and as we go, and we are just kind of called to share our own testimony, that we just point people to you, and know that God, you are the one that changes people's hearts and lives. So we just love you and cross your name. Amen.
Thank you. Steph, enjoy volleyball.